Shut up. Shut the fuck up. They banned it? What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. It is officially Banlist season because the OCG's Banlist has actually just been released. Now, I haven't seen the list yet. My friend sent me the link, so we have it up. But before we get into the actual reveal and the live reactions and the discussion of their list, and also maybe talk about the TCG's Banlist as well, I like to always start with the OCG's metagame because the OCG is vastly different than the TCG's meta, but sometimes a lot of the stuff that happens in the OCG actually translates over into the TCG as well. And as you can see here, this is the most recent metagame breakdown from Road of the King. Actually quite a diverse metagame. We have Sword Soul, which is the brand new archetype coming in Burst of Destiny. Phantom Knight's making a bit of a resurgence with the brand new Brave archetype, Brave token archetype that's in Grand Creators, the next deck building set. Tri-Brigade's still going pretty well. Phoenix Brave, we have Shaddoll, Virtual World, Drytron, and then a bunch of others. We can just take a look. I mean, there's quite a bit of diversity. It was sort of like in this deadlock between decks such as Sword Soul and Virtual World and Drytron. I think Eldritch actually was up here for a bit as well, but then Grand Creators entering the mix, and just the back and forth of the metagame has actually shifted things around quite a bit. Here's your typical Sword Soul list playing the Destiny Hero Destroy Phoenix Enforcer engine. This is a very popular engine in the OCG. A lot of people calling it Dragoon 2.0, but obviously that's a comparison to make for yourself. We still have Dragoon in the TCG, so that's something players are gonna have to decide if one is better than the other. The Phantom Knight list here, this is pretty sick to see Phantom Knight making a resurgence with these brand new Brave token cards. I think that's pretty sweet. We have the Tri-Brigade deck, very similar to actually what we have in the TCG. Aside from the fact there is the Destiny Hero engine in here for Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, that just goes to show how powerful of an engine this is, especially in a deck as solidified as Tri-Brigade for both OCG and TCG. So you guys have a general gist of like what's going on, right? So let's go ahead and go on over to the organization. I have it up here. I haven't seen it yet. Oh boy, you know, could be anything. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Looks like they did a live stream. That's pretty cool. That would be really interesting if the TCG actually did a live stream for this stuff. So newly forbidden cards. Moving down, True King of All Calamities getting forbidden. This is something the TCG's already done. I was actually shocked that the OCG didn't already ban this card, and the fact that they just limited it on their previous list. Like, Virtual World was already dominating as one of the best decks, and instead of actually banning the card, they just limited it, which doesn't really do anything. It just stopped like double Calamities plays, which were kind of degenerate, but overall it didn't stop Virtual World from being a good deck. And as we've seen in the TCG, even with the banning of Calamities, Virtual World is still a very strong contender. So that's really good to see. That card is just so degenerate. It's so unfun to play against, and I'm glad it's finally gone. I think that card should have gone a long time ago, but it really took a deck like Virtual World to push it over the top. Let's go ahead and see what else, though. I'm excited to... Shut up! Shut the fuck up! They banned it? They banned Mystic Mine! Yes! Yes, 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 yes. This is something that we have been clamoring for in the TCG for so long. And the OCG actually finally did it. Now, to be fair, Mystic Mine was already limited in the OCG, and for good reason, right? Mystic Mine, I mean, talking about unfun cards, right? This is one of the most unfun cards to play against. And yes, there's an argument to be made that, well, if combo decks are allowed to prosper and are able to end on these like 12, 15 negate boards, then why should a card like Mystic Mine exist to counteract that? But that's not exactly the good solution to solving the problem here. I don't think either should exist necessarily. As soon as Mystic Mine gets dropped, it just completely changes the dynamic of the game. I understand that there is technically a strategy behind it, but this card just had to go. This card was just so infuriating, and honestly, OCG players, I think you can rejoice for this one because that's fantastic. This is actually a pretty big blow to some decks like such as Sky Striker that was actually playing this as one of their like alternate win conditions going up against some of these combo decks, and a lot of the other lower tier decks that were using it as a win condition as well. You had stuff like Metaverse, you could terraform it, you could set rotation. There are plenty of ways to access it even with it still limited, but only having the one copy meant if it did get destroyed, then you actually did in fact out it and there wasn't another one coming from the deck. I can't believe they did it. I actually can't. I'm shocked. I mean, it was already limited, so maybe I'm not as shocked, but Wow, that's insane. Kudos to you, OCG. Honestly, if there's something I really hope the TCG picks up on here, it's the banning of Mystic Mine. I think that would be absolutely phenomenal. I actually took a moment to hop over to Beyond the Duel, another OCG Yu-Gi-Oh! Related news website, because I remembered that they actually show images, and now it makes sense why my friend didn't send me the link to this, because I would have seen it immediately had I opened it like this. So now it all makes sense, but I think for the viewer experience, this is better. I can't believe they did it. I cannot believe they actually banned it. That is insane. Kudos to you, Konami. Kudos to you. Let's go to limited. Cyframe Gear Gamma and Divine Arsenal Zeus. Now, this is fascinating. Gamma's a card that already went to 2 previously, and it's a very powerful hand trap, right? Not only can it negate effects, but also destroys the monster as well. And with links being so prominent, as well as other types of summoning mechanics as well, removing that monster from the field is also just integrally important, not just negating the effect at times. And so Gamma was actually just being played as a 3-of in almost every deck in the OCG, which is why Konami and the OCG decided to actually move it to semi-limited. They're much more liberal in the OCG with using the semi-limited list this way, whereas the TCG, we kind of are just over it. So it's interesting to see just the comparison there. But moving this card to 1, people were still playing Gamma at 2, which is the funny thing, because Gamma's just that strong. Being able to protect some of your biggest power cards that are spell cards, because Gamma can negate a hand trap like Ash Blossom to negate them, it still was worth playing even with 2 copies. With only 1 Gamma, I don't think it's worth the dex spot to play 1 driver for 1 Gamma. So I think putting it to 1 effectively bans it at the same time. But I could see an argument for this, but at the same time, I feel like Gamma is also a very strong countermeasure for some of these just ridiculous decks that tend to get out of hand. So not sure how I feel about it. Zeus, though. Zeus is a card that has definitely been on a lot of people's radar for quite some time. This just reads like a ban-worthy card, don't you think? The fact that it is not once per chain, the fact that you send all other cards on the field to the graveyard, it doesn't destroy, it's 3,000 attack, it has one of the most ridiculously laughable summoning conditions of a monster this powerful. You just have to be committed to Xyz in some way. There are arguments for this card to be hit, and honestly, I'm kind of okay with this. I think this card's going to 1 is probably better for the game. I like it as this sort of power move, but then once the Zeus gets removed, you're no longer going to see it. And so I think putting it to limited is probably correct. I don't necessarily like just banning cards outright. I think having it limited, the decks that can play it can still take advantage of it, but you're not going to be able to just spam it every single turn. I think that was just getting a little bit ridiculous. Moving on along to our semi-limits, though. Again, like I said, the OCG is a little bit more liberal with the semi-limited list than for the TCG here. Oviraptor, Red Eyes Darkness, Metal Dragon, Pot of Desires, and Cross Out Designator all going to 2. Oviraptor's a card, you know, compared to Dinosaur's just prowess here in the TCG, it didn't have the same effect in the OCG, but a lot more of their cards have been limited by comparison. A card like Oviraptor's been limited over there for a while. It also did enable like IB combos when IB was still legal, so that was another issue entirely. But moving this to 2, I don't know if this necessarily bumps Dinosaur up the playability ladder for the OCG anymore, because they have a lot more of the cards kind of put in check compared to us TCG players. We also have Red Eyes Darkness, Metal Dragon. This has an errata. It's still pretty powerful, but dragons, you know, haven't been doing a whole lot in terms of the OCG's metagame. And with the errata, you know, the card's kind of whatever. Pot of Desires is an interesting one. I think this might be the most interesting card on the list. Crossout Designator I can understand, because Called by the Grave is effectively Crossout Designator. Crossout Designator is actually better sometimes because you can hit cards that aren't necessarily just monsters. But Pot of Desires is fascinating because this is just like an overall reduction in consistency for any deck that could play Pot of Desires, right? And if we go back to these lists here, how many of them were actually playing Pot of Desires? Well, the Sword Soul list, this one's playing Prosperity, but some of these were actually playing Desires as well. The Phantom Knight list, it's just playing Crossout Designator, but this list is also playing 3 Crossout Designators. So let's just take a quick look here. The Tri-Brigade list, this one is also not playing Desires, but a lot of the TCG lists by comparison and a lot of the old Tri-Brigade lists were. But again, Crossout Designators here, very interesting. This one, again, 3 Crossout Designator. I mean, it's just a staple in all of these decks, right? This Shadal King of the Sky Prison list is playing 3 Desires, and this is the first one we've seen. But Desires is just ubiquitous, right? I mean, this is such a powerful card. I don't know if I like like this hit. It's, again, like putting something from 3 to 2 like this, you're just reducing the overall consistency of decks that can play it, and not every deck can play Desires. Being able to play Desires is actually a perk of some decks, and so the fact that you're hitting this and, you know, not some other cards, I'm not too sure about this one, but Designator, I can understand. It's very similar to Call by the Grave. It's equally as powerful, if not more powerful than Call by the Grave, and it's funny because this is a card that we haven't even seen yet in the TCG, although there are rumors it is in the Megatins. We'll just have to wait and see if that's true. Crossout Designator is a hell of a card, and so I could see the argument to want to reduce the amount of copies of this card because, again, if you're playing a combo deck, having 3 Crossout Designator plus your Call by the Graves means you're very likely to have your combos go through. It's one of those cards that it's really hard to kind of keep balance, especially with the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is now, so I can understand the hit here. I don't know if it's necessarily the right hit for it, but very powerful card, and as we saw in all the lists, it was basically a 3 of in every deck. And then moving on to the Unlimits, looks like there's a few of these as well. Danger Nessie, we have Salamangreat Circle, Mind Control, that's actually a very scary one, and Pendulum Call. Nessie going to 3, I don't know if that would be enough to push Danger over the top, to be honest. I think that's whatever. Salamangreat Circle going from 2 to 3, I think the Salamangreat players would rejoice about that one, but again, I don't know with the way the meta's shaping up if Salamangreat would even be a super viable strategy. Mind Control going to 3 is a scary one. I don't know if you guys recall when Mind Control was at 3 in like Master Rule 4, and this card can just get out of hand very quickly, especially with links. The fact that you can't attack or tribute with the monster doesn't matter when we now live in a format where we have cards like Zeus, where we have link monsters, and the fact that it doesn't have a built-in hard once per turn, this card's scary. I was actually very happy when this card went to 1, and you know, thankfully that's still the case for us TCG players. Moving this to 3, this could actually become a very viable card in a lot of decks, I feel, and I think once this list goes into effect, we might start to see that happen, depending on the types of decks people want to play. Pendulum Call, I don't know if this pushes Pendulum Magician any further into playability in the OCG. They've been like slowly getting pieces of this deck back. I think it went to 2 on the last list and it didn't do anything, so it is what it is, but overall, very interesting set of bans and just limitations all around. I cannot believe they got Mystic Mind. That would be incredible if they did that for the TCG. We've been crying out for that for ages, and it's just such an unfun card to play against. They checked some things that us TCG players already did, and it's interesting to see them hitting cards like Pot of Desires. That's something that I don't know if that sits well with me because, again, not every deck can play Desires. It's not like Pot of Greed where it just makes every deck that can play it better, and if you're not playing it, your deck is worse. You have options, right? You have Desires, Extravagance, Prosperity, and so having the options, you know, forces you into picking one deck or another. Just kind of hitting Desires to semi-limited as well just seems like a bit of a random hit. I'm not too sure, but you guys know I just absolutely despise the semi-limited list anyway. And then I think the other limitation I'm slightly concerned with is the one on Psyframe Gear Gamma, because that effectively bans the card. Again, I don't know if the OCG players are willing to play one driver for one Gamma. I mean, as good as Gamma is, I don't think it's worth playing a completely dead card for a single copy of that, but who knows? We'll have to see. Some interesting hits, and I'm curious to see how this is going to translate to the TCG. Again, completely different formats. We have the Megatins coming out in October. We have Burst of Destiny. We actually have some pretty good sets coming out, and so it's not a one-to-one comparison. However, sometimes some of these hits do translate, and I want to see what's going to play out. I'm super excited to see, but I want to hear what you guys have to say as well. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, because I love hearing what you say down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video informative, consider supporting me on Patreon for exclusive early one-day access to the history of Yu-Gi-Oh, the Yu-Gi-Oh Progression Series, and Yu-Gi-Oh Sealed Showdown. Thanks so much again, and we will see you next time.